Have you ever wondered if the quiet moments, the ones where you bite your tongue, hold your breath, or simply listen, could be the secret to unlocking your deepest strength? For women threading their way through a world that often demands they shrink, conform, or shout to be seen, the ancient wisdom of Buddhist philosophy offers a startling revelation. Silence isn't just a pause, it's a powerhouse. It's a powerhouse. Far from being a sign of surrender or a retreat into the shadows, silence is a sacred space where women can reclaim their agency, mend their spirits, and rise above the clamor of life's relentless storms. It's a tool of resilience, a shield against chaos, and a spark that ignites transformation. Through the raw, real stories of women across time and place, let's dive into 10 moments where silence becomes a woman's greatest ally, turning whispers into a force that shatters chains and carves paths to freedom, purpose, and peace. Imagine Maria, a single mother in Chicago, her life a tapestry woven with threads of sound and struggle. The clink of pots as she prepares dinner for her daughters, Eleanor and Sophia, in their cramped kitchen, the relentless hum of machinery at the factory where she toils through 10-hour shifts, the faint wail of sirens threading through her neighborhood, a gritty corner of the city where danger prowls like a restless goat. Maria's days are a marathon of survival. Bills stack up like unanswered prayers. Sleep eludes her as she worries over her girls' safety, and every small mishap feels like a crack in the fragile them holding her together. One evening, Sophia, her 8-year-old with a grin like sunshine, knocks over a glass of grape juice, the purple stain seeping into the linoleum Maria scrubbed just hours before. Anger surges, a hot, familiar tide. She could snap, let loose a torrent of sharp words that would echo through their tiny apartment, rattling the thin walls. But she doesn't. She shuts her eyes, draws a slow, deliberate breath, and lets silence drape over her like a cool, soothing cloth. This isn't weakness, it's wisdom, a choice rooted in the Buddhist teaching that silence in anger is a golden refuge. Maria knows that a harsh outburst would wound Sophia's trust, chip away at the bond she's fought to nurture through years of hardship. By choosing stillness, she becomes a pillar, anchoring her family when the world threatens to sweep them away, her quiet a testament to a strength that outshines rage. Anger is a shadow women carry, a smoldering ember fed by years of muffled dreams and unvoiced pain. History is rich with women who've wrestled this beast and turned its fire into a beacon. Take Sojourner Truth, born Isabella, born free in 1797, her early life a brutal odyssey through slavery's dark heart in New York's Hudson Valley. She was beaten with belts and rods, sewed away from her parents as a child, her 5 children torn from her arms by the slave trade's cruel machinery. Only one, Sophia, escaped with her when she fled in 1826. The rage could have devoured her, a justified inferno against a world that branded her less than human. She had every reason to scream, to hurl her pain at the heavens. Yet Sojourner chose silence as her sanctuary. She endured the whip sting without a cry, her stillness a fortress where she gathered the shards of her spirit. Years later, on May 29, 1851, she stood tall at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio, facing a crowd thick with doubt, men who smirked at a black woman daring to speak, women who questioned her right to stand among them. She could have met their disdain with fury, but her silence had honed her pain into something fiercer, something unyielding. When she spoke, her voice broke the quiet like a storm. Ain't I a woman? That question, forged in decades of silent endurance, landed like a thunderbolt, cracking the foundations of a society built on muting her voice. Silence in her anger wasn't defeat. It was the forge where she shaped suffering into a core that still reverberates, a testament to the power of holding fire until it can burn true. Now picture Priya, a software engineer in Bangalore, her workplace a buzzing hive of ambition and veiled barbs. She's a star, her code a symphony of precision and grace, but brilliance casts long shadows. In the break room, colleagues cluster over steaming cups of chai, their whispers sharp as knives. They pick apart her late nights at the office, some label her cold, others spin lurid tales of romances that exist only in their spiteful imaginations. One morning, Priya lingers by the coffee machine, catching her name snagged in their gossip's web. The hurt bites deep, a pang beneath her ribs. She could charge in, demand they stop, unravel their lies with a few choice words. But she doesn't. She turns away, her silence a wall they can't scale. Buddhist philosophy teaches that gossip and slander are venom, poisoning both the speaker and the spoken. Priya feels this truth in her core. By refusing to feed their malice, she lets the rumors wither, their sting fading in the void she leaves behind. Her quiet resolve echoes the journey of Malala Yousafzai, a girl from Pakistan's Swat Valley who faced bullets for daring to learn. On October 9, 2012, a Taliban gunman shot her in the head, aiming to silence her forever. From her hospital bed in Birmingham, Malala didn't curse her attackers. She healed in stillness, her silence amplifying her eventual words into a global hymn for girls' education. For Priya, silence isn't retreat, it's a fortress, a way to rise above the chatter and hold her dignity firm in a world eager to tear it apart. Conflict is a crucible where silence can shift the currents. Eleanor, a community organizer in rural Mexico, navigates this terrain daily. She's battling for land rights in a village where men grip power like a lifeline, their voices booming across dusty meeting halls. One stifling afternoon, a dispute over water rights erupts. Farmers bellow, fists pound weathered tables, accusations fly like sparks from a struck flint. As the only woman present, Eleanor could shout to claim her place, prove her mettle in their cacophony. But she doesn't. She sits still, her silence a cool stream cutting through the furnace of their rage. Buddhism murmurs that conflict brooms from attachment to pride, to possessions, to the need to win. Eleanor's quiet isn't avoidance, it's a deliberate pause, a mirror reflecting their heat back to them. Slowly the men falter, drawn into her calm like moths to a lantern's glow. This mirrors the valor of Lamojibowe, who in 2003 led Liberia's women to end a savage civil war. Dressed in white, they sat silently outside government buildings in Monrovia, their mute vigil a plea that drowned out the crack of rifles. That silence stopped a war, birthing peace where words had failed. Eleanor's stillness weaves the same magic on a smaller scale, proving that quiet can disarm chaos and build bridges where walls once stood. When pain surrounds you, silence takes on a divine weight. Sarah, a nurse in New York, carries this burden through the sterile halls of Mount Sinai Hospital. She's seen life's ravages, babies lost to premature lungs, families shattered by sudden strokes. One night, she sits with Carla, a mother whose 17-year-old son, Miguel, lies in a coma after a crash on the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway. The room pulses with the beep of monitors, but the air is heavy with a grief too vast for speech. Sarah yearns to offer comfort, to craft a phrase that might ease Carla's agony. But what words could bridge such a chasm? So she stays silent, her hand a steady anchor on Carla's trembling one. Buddhism's core of compassion shines here. Silence speaks when language stumbles, offering presence over hollow promises. Sarah's quiet recalls Mother Teresa, who spent decades among Calcutta's dying poor. She didn't preach to the sick, she sat with them, her stillness a warm embrace in their final breaths. For Sarah, silence isn't detachment, it's a lifeline, a way to share Carla's sorrow without diluting it with platitudes. In that hospital room, quiet becomes a sacrament, a vow that Carla's pain is witnessed, felt, held. Arguments with the furious test even the stoutest souls. Aisha, a high school teacher in London, faces this Gailed Ailey in her classroom at Brixton Academy. Her student Jamal, a weary 16-year-old with a spark of defiance, explodes over a C- on his history essay about the Blitz. His voice cracks with fury, unfair, stupid, pointless, words tumbling out like a river breaching its banks. Aisha could meet his storm head-on, raise her tone to assert her authority, remind him who grades the papers. But she doesn't. She stands there, her face a calm sea, her silence a mirror bouncing his tempest back to him. Buddhism warns against wrestling anger with more anger. It's like pouring oil on a blaze, watching it consume more reason. Aisha's stillness rattles Jamal, his shout slow, his breath hitches, and he storms out, the door banging shut behind him. Hours later, he slinks back, mumbling a gruff sorry. This echoes Rosa Parks, who on December 1, 1955, sat silently on a Montgomery bus, refusing to yield her seat to a white passenger. Her quiet defiance wasn't meekness, it was a spark that lit the civil rights movement, forcing a nation to hear its own dissonance. Aisha's silence does the same for Jamal, turning a clash into a lesson, proving that stillness can tame a wildfire and sow seeds for reconciliation. Oversharing beckons in a world wired for constant confession, and Lynn, a Vietnamese-American writer in California, feels its tug. At a literary mixer in Los Angeles, she meets a publisher, a woman whose name graces the jackets of bestsellers lining bookstore shelves. Lynn's story churns inside her, fleeing Saigon in 1975 at age 5. Her mother sewing their life savings into the hems of their clothes, her own dream of a novel that captures their exodus. She could spill it all here, hoping to dazzle with her raw and filtered truth. But she reins it in, offering a warm smile and a few measured words about her manuscript. Buddhism cautions against the rush to bare your soul. It risks trust and cheapens the slow bloom of connection. Lynn's restraint pays off. The publisher, intrigued by her quiet poise, asks to see her work. Think of Oprah Winfrey, who didn't broadcast her childhood scars from the outset. She built her empire brick by brick, her silence in those early years a canvas that made her later revelations seismic. Lynn's quiet isn't shyness, it's strategy, a way to let her craft speak when the moment ripens, preserving her story's potency for the page where it belongs. Complaining calls when life grinds you raw, and Fatima, a factory worker in Detroit, hears its siren song. Her back throbs from hefting crates on the assembly line at a Ford plant. Her supervisor barks orders with a sneer, her paycheck stretches thin as tissue to cover rent and groceries. Over lukewarm coffee in the break room, she could join her co-workers' litany of gripes, how the hours drag, how the bosses play favorites, how the cold seeps through the warehouse walls. But she doesn't. She works in silence, funneling her energy into quiet acts of defiance, like teaching her colleagues to read during their 15-minute breaks, her voice soft but steady as she traces letters on a napkin. Buddhism sees complaints as a leak, draining strength from solutions. Fatima's silence mirrors Harriet Tubman's resolve. Leading slaves north on the Underground Railroad, Harriet didn't curse the freezing rivers or the baying hounds snapping at their heels. She pressed on, her quiet a steady pulse of hope that carried hundreds to freedom. But Fatima follows in her footsteps, turning exhaustion into empowerment, her stillness a refusal to let hardship dim her light or define her days. Uncertainty demands silence when knowledge falters, and Jane, a college freshman in Texas, steps into this realm at her first debate club meeting in Austin. The topic is climate change, carbon credits, melting ice caps, rising seas, and the room crackles with confident voices, each speaker wielding facts like a blade. Jane's new to this, her understanding a fragile thread. She could bluff, toss out a vague opinion to blend in with the crowd. But she doesn't. I don't know enough yet, she admits, her quiet clearing a space for others to shine. Buddhism honors this humility, speaking without grasped clouds the waters of truth. Jane's choice echoes Ada Lovelace, who in the 1840s sat silently among England's mathematicians, absorbing their insights before penning the world's first computer algorithm. Her quiet learning birthed a technological dawn. For Jane, silence isn't shame, it's a seedbed, a place where she can root herself and grow into a voice that matters, one forged in real understanding rather than hollow bravado. Lying tempts when the stakes climb high, and Naomi, a lawyer in Sydney, feels its pull in a sleek boardroom overlooking the harbour. Her client, a developer with a fortune in concrete and steel, leans close, urging her to twist facts and dispute over a waterfront lot. A few skewed details could clinch the case, and the bonus would pad her savings with a tidy sum. The lie would be smooth, a quiet bend of truth tipped the scales. But Naomi stays silent, her refusal a line she won't cross. Buddhism holds truth as a cornerstone. A single falsehood fractures trust beyond repair. Naomi's stand recalls Susan B. Naomi Stanbrick, Anthony, who in the 19th century suffrage fight never spun tales to sway a crowd. Her silence on easy lies kept her movement's moral core unblemished. For Naomi, quiet preserves her soul, a beacon in a profession where truth often bends to power, her integrity a flame she refuses to snuff out for fleeting gain. These 10 moments: anger, gossip, conflict, others' pain, heated disputes, oversharing, uncertainty, lying, paint, certainty, lying, paint, silence as a woman's and some strength, a golden thread weaving resilience through the tapestry of their lives. Sojourners escape under a moonless sky to Molyneux's recovery in a sterile hospital ward. Women have turned stillness into a force that breaks shackles and builds legacies that ripple across centuries. This isn't about being voiceless, it's about choosing when to speak, letting silence sharpen your resolve and amplify your presence. In a society that drowns women in noise, patriarchal edicts, cultural scripts, the ceaseless grind of survival, Buddhist wisdom offers a lifeline, a quiet space to reflect, to heal, to rise. Maria's pause holds her family steady when anger threatens to fracture it, her silence a glue binding them through the storm. Priya's restraint guards her spirit from the venom of rumors, letting her work shine brighter than any rebuttal could. Eleanor's calm turns a shouting match into a dialogue, her quiet a bridge spanning rifts. Sarah's presence comforts Carlo's grief, her silence a hand extended through the dark. Aisha's stillness tames Jamal's fury, planting seeds of respect where conflict once flared. Lynn's reserve opens a door to her dreams, her quiet a canvas for her story's future. Fatima's silence lifts her co-workers up, turning drudgery into defiance. Jane's humility sows the ground for wisdom, her quiet a promise of growth. Naomi's refusal keeps her truth intact, her silence a stand against a world that trades integrity for profit. This power isn't new, it's a lineage stretching back through time, a chain of women who've found might in stillness. Hildegard of Bingen, a 12th century German mystic, sat in silence to hear divine melodies. Her quiet compositions define a church that sought to mute her voice. In 1940's Paris, Simone de Beauvoir lingered in smoky CAFS, her silence a forge for existential ideas that redefined women's place in the world. In 1963, Fannie Lou Hamer endured beatings in a Mississippi jail, her quiet resolve fueling her fight for black voting rights, her voice rising only when it could shake the nation. Today, women like you carry this torch, finding solace and strength in stillness amid modern life, deadlines that loom like thunderheads, social media's endless scroll, the pressure to be mother, worker, dreamer, all at once. Silence isn't absence, it's presence, a fullness that hums beneath the surface. It's the breath before a leap, the pause that births courage, the stillness that roars louder than any shout. For women, it's a rebellion against a world that demands they perform, conform, or vanish into the background. It's a space to listen to the whispers of your heart, the truths of your soul, the quiet power that's always pulsed within you. Think of Maria standing in her kitchen, the juice pooling at her feet, Sophia's wide eyes watching. She could have snapped, let the day's weight crash down, but she didn't. That silence saved her night, her bond with Sophia, her own fragile peace. Think of Sojourner, her back scarred from lashes, her voice stilled until it could thunder through a convention hall. That silence carried her to freedom, then to immortality. Now think of yourself standing at your own crossroads. When anger flares, maybe a co-worker steals your idea in a meeting, or a partner brushes off your exhaustion. Will you lash out, or will you let quiet guide you back to clarity? When gossip stings in perhaps about your parenting choices or your parenting choices or your career ambitions, will your career ambition will you idle in conflict? These women, Maria, Sojourner, Maria, Eleanor, Sarah, Aisha, Lynn, Fatima, Jane, Naomi, didn't just survive, they thrive, their thrives, their silence a river carving through stone, shaping lives of meaning from the raw clay of struggle. You walk in their lineage, a sisterhood of quiet warriors who've turned stillness into a force that breaks chains and builds worlds. In a society that often mistakes women's silence for weakness, Buddhist wisdom unveils its essence, a strength that steadies the heart, sharpens the mind, and lifts the spirit above the fray. Step into that silence, not as a guest but as its keeper. Let it cradle you when the world presses too hard, when the kids won't stop fighting, when the inbox overflows, when the mirror reflects a tiredness you can't name. Let it steal you when the noise threatens to drown you, when voices demand you explain yourself, when expectations pile like bricks on your shoulders. Let it lift you when you're ready to rise, when you've healed enough to dream again, when you've gathered the pieces of yourself into something whole. In that quiet, you'll hear your own voice, clear and unbroken, ready to shape the world as only you can. Maria found it in her kitchen, a single breath that held her family together. Sojourner found it in the witch shadow, a stillness that birthed a revolution. Priya found it in the break room, a refusal that kept her spirit whole. Eleanor found it in the meeting hall, a calm that turned foes into allies. Sarah found it in the hospital, a presence that eased a mother's grief. Aisha found it in the classroom, a quiet that tamed a storm. Lynn found it at the mixer, a reserve that opened her future. Fatima found it on the factory floor, a strength that lifted others. Jane found it in the debate, a humility that promised wisdom. Naomi found it in the boardroom, an integrity that shone bright. You'll find it too in the car after a long day, in the pause before you answer, in the moment you choose yourself over the noise. It's been there all along, this whisper of power, waiting for you to claim it. It's the power to pause before you break, to listen before you leap, to heal before you heal others. It's the power to stand tall in a gale, to walk through fire unscathed, to build a life that's yours alone. It's the power to be still when the world spins wild, to be silent when it screams, to be whole when it tries to fracture you. So the next time life roars, when anger flares at a slight, when words wound like blades, when chaos reigns over your plans, will you roar back, or will you find the courage to be still? In that stillness lies your redemption, your resilience, your becoming. It's not just a moment, it's a movement, a quiet revolution that starts with you. Embrace it. Wield it. Let it carry you. In those whispers of silence, you'll find the strength to rewrite your story, to rise as the woman you were always meant to be, unshaken, unbroken, unstoppable.